Hey guys, welcome to another With Friends episode of the Unjuggle the Struggle podcast. Today we have got my new friend, Cat Roten, on. She is a podcast host and event planning expert alongside other entrepreneurs who are helping them plan their own profitable and personalized events. Today we are talking about everything that has to do with like leaving corporate and jumping into entrepreneurship, and that includes the money piece of it, doesn't it, girl?
Oh, yes, it does.
Oh, yes, it does. Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to get into this conversation today. Before we jump on in, though, you got to share with us, who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Cat Roten, as Brittany just said. I am the founder of Impactful Event Co., as well as she mentioned the podcast host of Imperfectly Impactful. So I actually am coming up, I think when this actually releases will be my year mark of the podcast. So, yep, it was big December 1st of 2023. And it was really, the podcast came from this whole idea that I knew something had not been right in me for a while. And I had relied on perfectionism and people pleasing to get through. And that was just no longer aligned. So I really talk about my story, bring on guests. Brittany as well will be on there here soon. And we really just talk about how you don't have to be perfect to make an impact on yourself for other people. And then my business is events. I was in hotels for almost a decade. And I did everything in there, including events, of course. And that's where I found like my passion and my purpose. And it has taken me a while to get where I am now to figure out exactly where my strengths lie in events. But honestly, it comes down to logistics. That's where my expertise is, as well as kind of going into sponsorships and all the other things. I love doing trainings. I love pouring into my community because that's just who I am as a person in general. I've always been tied to groups. I'm a dog mom lover, a coffee shop girly, like coffee, matcha, anything in a coffee shop, just put me in there because I love to mix and mingle and feed off other people's energy. I'm an extrovert. So it's just how I work and how I do. But I am a girl who is all over the place and just so grateful to be here, Brittany, with you, because I feel like what we're going to talk about today and this transition from corporate into entrepreneurship, and honestly, a crazy personal development journey comes with entrepreneurship. I think as many of us know, it really has changed who I am. I am not the person I was a year ago at all, nowhere close. And I'm just excited to share, like I do on my podcast, do more about that.
You literally just gave me chills because like, as you're saying the words, I'm literally not the same person I was a year ago. Everything in that lands in my body. And I can say the exact same thing. And it's been all about this personal growth, personal development, a journey that I never anticipated being on, but was so called for. Did you always want to be an entrepreneur, or what? Kind of tell me a little more about that.
I knew probably because my parents were entrepreneurs my entire life, basically in different senses. I wouldn't say there was ever this true struggle. They were kind of passed and handed to them the family business, and then they just dispersed from there is how I joke. But I knew, I mean, my original goal was to own my own boutique hotel one day and like have this whole property. It was in hotels. I was like, I'm gonna work my way up to GM and I'm gonna have a boutique property. I still might have that one day, but that's not like the big end goal anymore. So entrepreneurship was there, just not quite in the same path or looking quite the way I thought it would.
Yep. Fair. So then you tell us a little bit more about your time in corporate. And then I'm really interested kind of like what flipped, because I think that there has to be, or at least in my experience, there was a moment, and it happened then there was a moment where you're like, oh crap, I think something's got to change. And then you like start to figure out what the oh crap is. But tell me more about like what you were doing in corporate and when you kind of had this moment.
Yeah. So I worked for Marriott International for most of my time in hotels. So I bounced around to 5 different states. Again, I did everything from front office, housekeeping, events, banquets. I've seen it all. I've done it all different sizes, from a 70-room boutique hotel to a 1,800-room hotel I've worked at. And in October of 2022, we had moved to Nashville about 6 months prior to that. And I was sitting in my office. I was actually in housekeeping at that time, assisting with events and housekeeping. And I was sitting there and I was like, something's not right. Not at all. I had been at a boutique property prior to this during COVID, had ran that, burnt myself out working 20+ hour days, 7 days a week. I did that actually at
Mhm.
the hotel right before COVID when we shut it down. And I was like, something is not right. Like, I can't tell you what it is, but something was just completely off. And that is actually when I found Lori Harder's Earn Your Happy podcast. And
Oh,
then she
great podcast.
introduced me. Oh, it's fantastic. And within a few weeks or a few months, Lindsay came on hers and I found Powerhouse Women. And so these were the introductions to podcasts. Had never listened to them before, had no idea, had always been like very, no, I just read. That's how I work. Like I'm a big reader. And I started hearing about all these other people's stories and how there were all these other ways you could work and live and
Mhm.
be. And I had never heard of these possibilities. I had always been told and been praised for me, who I am. You're amazing in hotels. You're going to work your way up, and that's what you're going to do. And so
Keep
that was just the
persevering, right?
expectations. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
keep
was just
working hard.
in
Mhm.
benefits, salary, all the things. So this is the funny story. So in first week of March, I heard on the podcast an old episode. Lindsay had announced the Powerhouse Women event. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should look and see when this is. So I go on the website and it's showing it for August of 2023 at this point. And I'm like, I'm going to buy a ticket. So I go on and I go through the whole process and I'm submitting my credit card information. It won't process it. And I was like, well, this is weird. So I emailed them. It's an old episode, remember, I'm listening to from like, I don't even know, 2021, 2022. And basically, they hadn't opened the doors to sell tickets yet for the event in August. It was happening in another week. So I ended up buying a ticket. I attended Powerhouse Women for the first time, August 2023. And I met a core group of women who changed my life. They,
Mm.
in general, the room showed me all these possibilities, but they truly believed in me. And when I showed up there, I was like, I'm in hotels, but this isn't for me, I know. And within 3-4 weeks, I got offered an event management job outside the hotel industry in promotional products, still in like a corporation though. And
Yeah.
I thought I was taking an amazing job and stepping into like who I really wanted to be, not tied to hotels. This is a possibility and opportunity. I do not regret it. I spent 6 months in that job though and was in the worst work environment I had ever been in. Working still 16, 20-hour days. I was traveling twice a month, which I love to travel. I still travel twice a month usually, but there was just something about me traveling for trade shows and expos and people just trying to sell things to other people. And that's not the
Mhm.
events I do. I like the
Mm.
personal professional development events where there's transformations and ahas and people are taking away things that they get to implement on themselves in their business and their life, whatever that looks like. And I knew 3 months into the job that it was not right for me.
You knew it.
And I was scared so bad to my core because I knew that meant I had to take the leap and leave, but I
Mhm.
didn't have quite the savings. I had invested in a business coach at that point who cost me thousands of dollars, and I was not financially probably in the place to leave and be able to pay for that. And beginning of February, the hardest thing is I felt like I was letting down my boss because she was also a friend of mine and my
Mm.
parents. I had this
I
arbitrary number in my head that I had to be in a job for a year. I don't know if anyone else has ever thought, I don't know why that number
right?
is in our head, but it's like the year. You commit to a year no matter what. And I was like, I'm leaving in 6 months. I'm going to let everyone down. And there was questioning, but ultimately my mom looked at me and knew how badly it was affecting me. I mean, my emotions physically, I was just not
Yeah.
healthy anymore. It was truly impacting me. And I put in my notice and I left at the end of March this year, 2024. I have not looked back. I mean, I think we all go do the whole LinkedIn scroll, like, should I look for a job? But in all honesty, it has been the best decision because it's the happiest I've been ever that I can remember, at least, even though it's not every day I'm happy, but I'm still the happiest that
Yeah.
I've ever been.
And I know like it's I was telling like my Uber driver recently the story, and he was like, "Wait a second. So you don't have a paycheck? Like you're not bringing money in for your family yet?" And you're like, "No." And he's like, "But you seem so like free and at peace and happy." And I was like, "Bro, your words, not mine." I mean, those are exactly my words, but that was like I'm at a position right now where I've never been so financially unstable. And again, like we're fine, but in my mind, the way that I classify it, like we've never been so financially unstable yet. In the morning, I wake up with so much peace and just this like unwavering faith and confidence that I am exactly where I am supposed to be. And it's not a matter of like if the money will come. I know it will. I know I am putting in the time and the effort, and I am working on the things and the spaces that I need to, that it will come. But yeah, and it's just this crazy concept. I didn't even think that that was possible. I mean, if you would have asked me a couple of years ago, no way would I think that not having a paycheck would still equal happiness. Like that sounds
Yeah.
bonkers.
I thought happiness came with the money and like having the money to do what I wanted to do. And I mean, I still am working through this, but the worthiness tied to it as well. And that like,
Mhm.
how am I worthy of happiness and of love and of a life and to travel if I don't have the money to back me up? Like
Yeah.
it's so hard, yet it's also so liberating at the same time to know I get to wake up and I can go for a walk and I can make a cup of coffee and not have to sit and look at my emails and answer messages at like 5 a.m. in the morning because that's when they want you to respond.
Yeah, crazy. And obviously too, like we're not sitting here saying that that we don't both long for ginormous bank accounts, and that money absolutely is a tool that can help generate and create
Mhm,
additional like happiness opportunities. Like that's I don't think that's debatable for anyone. So
mhm.
yeah, but the money reframing that has to take place. I know for me too, part of what I had to do is I almost had to force myself into a pre-identity crisis. Like when I knew that I was going to leave, it was the hardest pill to swallow
Yeah.
because I actually loved what I was doing. I was in a great environment. I loved my team. I loved
Mm,
the work that I was doing. I just had a moment a couple years ago where I was like I just felt this pressing on my heart that I was supposed to be more intentional with my gifts and to use them outside of the corporate box. And I struggled. I fought it for about a year and a half. Like, no, I'll just use more of my gifts in the box more. And it worked out well for me, except for every time I got an award or every time I got a conversation I would have died for, I didn't want it anymore. And there was like a lack of fulfillment and a lack of satisfaction. And that's how I knew that's that's how I knew I needed to make a change, but also too how I knew for me that like my change wasn't just into a new job. And
yeah.
so I'm really glad that you brought up because I think that some listeners, if they've been following, they've heard me kind of share that story where I didn't jump into a new job. I actually had no idea what I was jumping into. But I think your story, I think that that's really familiar for a lot of folks too, because they know they need to change. And so new job comes along and they're like, this is it. This is it. Do you think that if it wouldn't have been a toxic work environment, do you think that you would have put in the year plus? Or like, do you think it was aligned for you or not?
It was not.
It was
Because it was the trickle effect of the people I was working with and our kind of
not.
head exec team was the toxicity. But
Mhm.
then it came into the idea that self-care was not a thing. We tried to do a breathwork little session thing at one of the events. No one showed up, which was fine.
Oh,
The breathwork facilitator did, and I had a chat with him, and he left. And the president of the company actually walked up to me, and I've told this story a few times. He said, "Who was that guy?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, he was the facilitator for the breathwork we're doing during these breaks. People need breaks. It's a floor. It was a huge trade show of 10,000 people. And we were like, our owners and franchisees need a place to come and like
yeah.
relax and decompress for a little bit." And he goes, "Oh, none of our people and none of our team will ever do anything like that. That's not what we do here in the company." And I went, and that was the first like, oh,
Oh, I see.
okay.
Yeah.
And then it turned into just like the continuous repetitive. I would like start doing something and planning, and a decision was made. And then 5 days, 2 days, a day before an event or something was happening,
That's
changes were wanting to be made. And it was the CEO. So you had to make the change. I'm like, but this is confirmed. This is a contract has been signed changes cannot be made. It's like, well, you have to make it happen. And I am willing to do whatever I can for the people I work for, but there are some things that I cannot change and it is out of my control. And it was like, oh, but you have to make magic happen. And that's just where I was like, I can't keep doing this. And it's been, I know people still in that company, and I knew people that had been there for years when I got there that were struggling. And I was like, well, there's a piece of me that hopes I can inspire you to take the leap and understand that there's something better for you out there. Maybe not yet, but there is something when you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. And too, I mean, that's not again, right? Our experiences, they're normally not, they don't, why we feel like they happen in a silo, they actually are not that different from, there's so many organizations out there. There's so many really poor leadership teams out there. I worked in staffing, so I got to work with thousands of organizations. And yeah, there's some really, it's hard to find good organizations. So I think that you and I both, can relate with that. Okay. So you knew it was a toxic work environment, you had to get out of it. Did you know that was then you're like, you know what? Hey, I'm in this position. I may as well start my entrepreneur journey, or like you put in your notice and then what?
So I actually started being a travel agent April of 2023, like as a side fun thing when I was still in hotels. And I thought I was going to build that. That did not really happen. And I'd had this idea of an event. And that's what I had hired my business coach on in November of 2023 at that point. So I've been working with her for 2 months when I had this realization I needed to leave. And she very much was so supportive, but she's also like, you don't have to leave or like find another job to supplement the income while you're doing this. I'm like, no. Like, this is on my heart. Events is my passion. And I've been attending these other events and seeing people attend other women entrepreneur hosted events. And I was like, I want to support them. And and I knew at my core, that's what I wanted to do. And there was like, I can't explain it fully, but something in me was like, yeah, you just have to do it. And who knows when. And then that's when I was like, I have to put my notice in because it's holding me back from even being able to start the process. So I put in my notice. And I actually gave them like 6-7 weeks because there was a huge event that happened at the end of March. Yeah, I was there a long time. They all knew I was leaving.
Very gracious.
Well, it was because of this event, and I knew I had to stay through it. I was not traveling for the event. I had told them I would stay through it. I would not travel for it, and they convinced me the week before, and I ended up traveling to Texas for the event. Very graciously, a lot of them did support me where I didn't have to interact per se with a ton of the upper execs and everything. I still kind of did. And I got to leave after 2 days. It was a 3-day event. I left after 2 days. Nice. During that 6 weeks though, I really tried to start honing in on what did my business actually look like? Cause I knew the idea. I knew like, this is what I want to do. But then it was like, okay, what's my offers? Like, I'd never created my own offers before.
Money. How am I going to make money? Yeah,
and
it's a real question.
No idea. And I came up basically with I was going to help people plan their events, and that's just kind of what it was going to be. And we'll start there. And I had two. I had I'll help you plan, and then I had a coaching. So like I'd work one-on-one coaching twice a month. We'd meet and Voxer back and forth. Basically, I'm not doing the planning for you, but I'm there to support you at least through. I got one client actually in the month of March that started in April, $400 a month. Yes. And that was it.
And that was it
for like the first 3 months. And all I said is, I don't know why, but I have to stick with this. And I've had people ask me since then, well, would you ever go back? Like, have the hotels reached out to you? Has the company reached out to you? Would you ever go back? And I'm like, no. I can't, because I've stepped into who I am now. And yes, I think they could accept me as who I am, but also who I am is running this business full-heartedly and putting all of my time and energy into it. I can't half do this. This is not how I work.
Yes. I was the same way. It was like, I had someone the other day, it was such a great question. It was like, well, what gifts weren't you using in corporate that now you feel you can use in entrepreneurship? And it was like, wasn't that a great question? And I was like, well, it wasn't that I couldn't or wasn't using them in corporate, or that I wasn't showing up as, my full self. In fact, I would say my success catapulted the last 10 years of my career because I was one of the few who was willing to vulnerably and authentically show up as my whole self. And so it wasn't that I couldn't use these gifts or I couldn't show up authentically. For me, it was I just knew I was supposed to be more intentional about putting them to use outside of the corporate arena. And that was all I knew. I knew, similar to you, I was working. I'd spent so long working so many hours that by the end of the day, there was zero extra left other than what I was already like pouring into my family. And I wasn't willing to sacrifice what I was pouring into my family just to try and create space for me to figure out what my plan of attack was actually going to be. I wasn't willing to do that, but I also knew I didn't have anything in me to come up with the plan, to come up with the side hustle. So I envy you that you had the side hustle. I envy you that you were able to put like actual action in motion and to get even that client, because if you can get one, you can get two, you can get four, you can get eight, you can get 16.
Mhm.
Yep. And that's our journey right now, right?
Exactly. And I will say I have a lot to thank for putting myself in the room at Powerhouse in August, because I met
Mhm.
women who hosted events. And that's how I got that first client, actually, is I went to Powerhouse. I joined Six Figure Schools, my first investment ever in myself. And I met a lady through there who hosted an event up in Michigan in March. And I attended, and that's where that client came from. And to be honest, most of my clients that I've gotten to this point, who I've sent proposals to, who I've had chats with, most of them I've met through events, whether they're virtually, like the masterminds and stuff, how we met,
Mhm.
or it was attending an event in person and people being like, we need to talk more. It's so hard to spend that money sometimes for it. But when I got that proof in March before I left my corporate job that's a way and it works for me, it's like I have to keep doing it. Even if I'm not seeing the ROI immediately, I know it's a long game and it
It's a long
sucks,
game.
but also it's going to happen. And I'm
Yeah.
starting to see the ripple effect from there, but
Yeah.
it takes time, and I'm very fortunate to already be seeing it only 6 months in. Most people don't see it for a year, 2, 3 years.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so good. So good with oh man, I am so sorry. I the question I wanted to ask you was going to escape. Oh, okay. So yeah, so you started to see it come in. You are starting to also like play and figure out with what's working well for you. What are some of the changes? I'm curious, and I'll share too. What are some of the changes financially, like in home, you've had to make for yourself?
That's a hard one. I think we were talking about this earlier. I originally, honestly, when I left the corporate world, tried to live my life very similar to where we were at. The only difference, and it honestly was the saving grace for me and my husband, is when I left my job in March, I went to Europe to visit my sister. So she lives abroad. And during that time, my husband packed basically our entire apartment for us. And we moved back to North Carolina and are living in my grandparents' home right now. So we
Wow.
are very fortunate. And this is what I always like try to like cover with people is I made this leap knowing there was no rent, no mortgage to pay. We just pay utilities. I am very grateful and so thankful because not many people have that. And that helps support the move because my husband had a job, but it was not great. I was always the breadwinner in our relationship. And he didn't have a job when we originally moved as well for the first 2 months. So neither of us were really like, I brought in $800 in 2 months when he first came.
Yeah.
So that was a big saving grace for us. But I tried to live my life during those months like I normally would. And it hit about, I'll be honest, probably till August, so just 2 months ago, that I
Yeah.
was like, "I'm just gonna push through. I'm gonna live my life the way I want to because that's how I'm gonna make the money, is I'm gonna show up like the person I am and I'm going to become, and that's how it's going to be."
Mhm.
And I realized that's not the case. And it's really been hard because I've made some really difficult decisions in just the last few weeks even, where we were gonna go back and see my sister in December in Europe, and I just found out she's actually coming home for the holidays. And so we're not going anymore. I know, I'm really excited. But like that was a huge, I mean, multiple $1,000s for tickets and to go visit her. It was going to be, I'm like, we can't make that work. So when I found that out, I was like, that's the sign I needed. Okay, we're canceling that trip. I had multiple trips back out to Arizona and stuff in November. I decided I am doing none of that. We are staying home. We are going to make food, not go out and eat. I got to cut back on my coffees because I'm a coffee drinker and coffee shop girl, like I said. And I'm having to just be very intentional and sit back and say, should I spend money on this? I've never been in a no season since starting this journey almost a year ago when I hired my business coach. And I have to be in a no season right now. And so that is what I am, because financially, that's where I have to be. There's no more yeses. There's no more investments. There's no more coaches, masterminds, not till January, because I have it in me. I've learned, people have had to remind me, it's inside of me. And I have an incredible community I built this last year. I don't need to keep going externally. I need to turn inwards the next few months and put my head down, because it's going to save us the money and it's going to build my business quicker, honestly, because I'm starting to see momentum. So now I just got to put my head down and do it.
It is. Absolutely. Yeah. I've had to be really careful with even like the amount of, I noticed right out of the gates, I was reading a lot of books, and I had to be really, oh yes, you resonate. Like I had to be really mindful of like, wait a second, there is a difference between trying to self-educate. Yes, that's important. And it is absolutely a part of the game too. But at what point are you just trying to over prepare, or are you just putting off doing the thing that you don't want to do, or the thing that seems a heck of a lot harder than just opening up a book? And
or
so
the
for
busy
me,
work, you're just tied up in the busy work side too.
the busy work, or like the, hey, I could go to this event and I can, again, the ROI of going to the event is there. But then, like, are you missing the potential opportunity that was right at your fingertips of just being able to do a Zoom with someone? Maybe, maybe not. I think that there's arguments for both sides of it. But yeah, the budgeting, we did that right away, because again, for us, I cashed out a 401k that was never meant to be touched. Like it was, I did not know a year ago that I was going to quit my job. I was still trying to figure out what that's something that I knew I was supposed to be doing different. I was still trying to figure out what that was. And so, yeah, for us, it was things like we'd always busted our tail. We've been fortunate enough that like a grocery budget, and people love me and hate me for this, but like I refused to make a grocery budget most of my life. I grew up, single parents, where that wasn't a luxury. And so I just knew that when in my adult life, I didn't want to have a grocery budget. If I wanted whatever I wanted at the store, that's what I wanted. And so this was a humbling reminder how important and what a useful tool a grocery budget can be. So sitting down and actually having to do that for the first time, it was like pulling teeth. My husband and I mean, but in the same time, for as difficult it was, like, again, it was such a beautiful moment of reflection of like, man, how blessed we have been. And if we've been in these shoes before, like we will get there again. And maybe next time, as we continue to level up, next time we level up, we won't be so wasteful. And that's actually been, that's been one of my biggest, like, holy hallelujah moments. I wasn't expecting in all of this. It was like, man, there's still a way to like level up and expand and to be like the 10 times versions of ourselves. But we could do this so much better. And so that's been a really cool opportunity for us.
I resonate with that so much, because it's actually been the thing recently that keeps coming up in my head is, Catherine, you're learning like how to live off of less. You were so fortunate right out of college to have a management job and to move up and make this money. So for me, I never per se struggled, because I did have that salary and stable job. And COVID hit. I still got paid out my unemployment while I was furloughed. And then I got an even better job right after. And like in the midst of it, like I have been living a life of very much fulfillment and getting to choose and be choosy. And now I can't. And it's an amazing reflection, because then, like you said, you get to carry it with you now into the future. And that's probably the best thing for both of us right now, is getting to realize, oh, we don't need all those things. What is it that we actually just need, and can we live without that? And then maybe down the road, that money you save turns into something else that's even better.
Yep.
So.
And it's been, and even too, like the way that, so I hear a similarity too with just our curiosity of like, ooh, I wonder what this looks like in the future. And so I've noticed that those little things where they're little light bulb moments, the way that I'm like, ooh, I wonder how I could apply this even to, and for instance, like our parenting. So it was like, ooh, I wonder how I can even be more intentional, like peel back one extracurricular activity for the kids and instead invest that time to make sure that we have family dinners, like little stuff like that, that you're just like,
I
ooh,
love
this is
that.
it's such gold. And again, I don't know if we would or wouldn't still have those same opportunities if I wasn't in corporate, but I know the shoes that I'm in today, like it is one just beautiful unfolding after another. Doesn't mean that it's easy. Does not mean that the struggle is not real. But here we are.
Yes, and we're here.
I know. I love it. Oh, so good. Okay. I'm trying to see if there's, so, what do you think overall, maybe, yeah, from corporate to entrepreneurship, what has been the toughest part?
Toughest part. I want to say the money, but to be honest, it's not even that. I think that is a difficult thing, but it's something we can work through. I think honestly, it's the relationships I've left behind. And we briefly talked about this. I think I have been a people pleaser for so long. I don't fall far from the truth because my mom's very similar. She does everything for everyone else. And that's just the life I grew up in and what I know. And you give and you give and you give. And I never allowed myself to stop and receive truly, and to stop and reflect, even just to know, is there an equal energy exchange happening here that I'm giving, but are they able to hold me when I'm going through something difficult as well? Not just they're there when they need something. And it's been hard because I've had to let some of these relationships go that have been around for years, decades. But in all honesty, there's also some that I had in the past year, and I was like, this is amazing. Like you're with me throughout this journey, and you're seeing me change. And some of them just, it's like they're entrepreneurs themselves. They understand it, but they don't understand and like accept what's been going on, if that makes sense at all. And it's having to realize I can't keep pulling them along and forcing it, because it's taking all this energy and my time that I need to be focused on my community and my clients and my family and my friends and the other people around me. And it's been hard, but it's also been the thing that I think I've grown the most in, honestly, since leaving corporate. Because at corporate, you had to work with these people. They were your coworkers, they were your employees, they were your bosses. And then when I left, those usually were my friends too, because I didn't have a life outside of my work because I worked so
You're not
much.
the only one. Yes, yes.
So like that was it. So then now getting the option to say, who are my clients? Who am I working with one-on-one? Who am I spending my time with on calls, on Zoom, in person, and be able to sit back? It was so hard because I didn't want to. I'm like, I just want to make everyone happy and I just want to give and like that be it, because it's just easier that way.
Yeah.
But also it was draining me the most.
Yeah. How did you get over that? Because same, yeah. How do you, or what's the first thing that comes to mind on like what's helped you continue to work through it?
My community. I have an amazing support system, amazing support system that I'm so grateful that I've never had before, that I can be my true self and like be honest. And they, in a non-judgment way, will let me open up without specifics, but at least share something and can mirror back to me. And I've never had someone be able to mirror back to me what they're hearing, and then me be able to sit and process. And then I usually take that and it's journaling and breath work. It's really like moving it through. I've always been a very active person. I'm currently standing and like I'm shifting around and moving anyways. I'm a very like, I'm always active. I'm walking, I'm working out, all the things that helps move the energy. But ultimately it's the breath work and then journaling afterwards that really gets it from stuck in my head out of my
Out.
body.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I would say so relationships too. I remember it was like the first 60 days out of leaving, and it was like the phrase that continued to be on repeat was like, I'm just trying to figure out who I want at my table. Who I want at my table. Who do I want at my table? Who do I want at my table? And it was like you started kind of it to some degree felt awful because there was like a judgment almost that was taking place. Like that's what it felt like. And it was like, okay, this relationship, is this someone who I want sitting at my table? And when I realized that I had an awful lot of no's, that was a huge blow. Because you're like, well, crap and a half. Now I'm in the middle of the most vulnerable transformation I've ever been in. And I hadn't done myself due diligence up to this point to make sure that I had the right people at the table always. And obviously, I mean, I've got incredible relationships too. Like the people who are at the table I'm so grateful for them. But yeah, looking at my relationships was hard for me too.
well, and I even think of it as a relationship to our jobs and like to our work and how we
Totally.
tie that together as well. And I mentioned this earlier when we were chatting, is this guilt that I even felt to the people I left at the job. And
Yeah.
even though they barely talk to me, they only have reached out to me the last 6 months to ask me questions about the job that I left because they didn't know where things were, or they didn't know if a contract got signed months ago at the beginning of the year. And I stayed on for 2 months to support them, and I continued to answer them until the beginning of September. And I had to realize that they are not people I need to keep in my life, and that's not my responsibility anymore. But it's so hard because I think we hold the guilt inside that it is our responsibility if someone's upset or someone's struggling when we've done and left, even though it's for the better of us. But
Yeah.
until we can let that go, it holds us back too. And that's been the big lesson of it all, is there's a way, a very respectful and forgiving way to leave people, and don't just like leave them dry and be like, I'm done. No, we're not friends anymore. I'm not talking to you. I'm not working for
This
you.
ain't working for me.
It's not like an all or nothing. There is a good sweet middle of saying,
Yes.
I care for you. Thank you so much for the opportunity in this job. It's been amazing. I just
Yes.
need space right now. I need time. I can't be here. And I've
Mhm.
done it. It's so funny. I thought about this recently. 3 years ago, I did this with somebody, and I didn't realize I did it in this way, but I very respectfully said, I cannot be friends with you right now because you're holding me back. I went through a time where alcohol was a big struggle of mine, and it was somebody that's all we ever did was go out and drink. That was 3 years ago. I didn't realize I was doing it then, and I've reflected back on it now going, there's a
Crazy.
way to do it, and they might never answer and they might never talk to you again, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
you have to do what's right for you ultimately. Be a little
Yeah.
greedy. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay to be a little selfish. Yeah, I always like like for me, I kind of envision like this path, and you're at this crossroads, and whatever the relationship is standing at the crossroads. And it's like, okay, hey, I'm going here. Like that's where I'm going. And you're more than welcome to come with me under certain conditions. You're more than
Mhm.
welcome to come with me. But if you can't, or if you don't want to, or if you're unable and unwilling, that's okay too. I can still love you here in this space of these crossroads, but I'm still going here. And just like that, that's a beautiful, okay, exchange and place to get to.
I love the way you put that.
Thank
It's
you.
been a very similar way I left with someone recently, and it's
Yeah.
so hard because they don't want to hear it, but that's a very loving way.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. Oh my goodness, my friend. I love this. Is there anything that we didn't bring forth that you just want to that you're bursting out with? You're like, I want to make sure that as far as this corporate entrepreneur journey piece that we share with folks.
I feel good. I think everything got out there. It's all intertwined is what I love. It's
Yeah.
the struggle of the past mixed with the struggle of now is all here. And it's nice to know I'm not alone because we're both
Oh,
going through this.
so not alone. I know I'm just so grateful that our paths have crossed, and I would love to. So I can't wait for the ways and the capacities that you and I will work together in the future. Like, who knows, right? So we've got these podcasts, and I mean, there's probably events in my future too. So I
There
can't just wait.
better be. There
Oh,
better be. I'm
yes.
always going to push for events, whether you work with me or not. I'm going to push for events.
I love it. No, I can't wait to just keep locking arms with you. So, okay. So tell us about, so we are about to head into the new year and you have something huge. This is something you've been working on for the last couple months. Tell us all about it.
Yes. So this has actually been on my heart since May of this past year, and I didn't do anything with it. And recently, in the past few months, kept coming back, and I was like, I have to act on it because it is my core, and I cannot do anything else in my business till I do this. And it is that I am officially launching Impactful Events, the community. It literally is a place for event hosts, women entrepreneurs in particular, to come together where we can support one another. I can pour into you. You get resources, you get trainings, all the things included in this membership that ultimately supports you in planning, hosting, executing, and the afterwards debrief of events. And I love it because it's going to be very affordable. It is to fill this gap where people love to host the simple events that are easy to throw together, more like parties, honestly, is how I feel, to being able to hire a planner. There's this gap in between those two where you need to be in your business, you need to be in your zone of genius, and you need to be able to pour into those around you and have the energy for it. And right now, there's really nothing there, and people get drained or they have to be pulled out of their business to be able to plan the event. And I don't want to see that anymore. So I'm creating this to kind of fill that gap and make sure people can still host the events because you can do it. And it will actually be an extension of your business and who you are. And that's what I'm bringing to life in January. So I'm very excited. And yeah, details are coming more and more put together, but I just cannot wait to launch this. And would love to see many of you there.
I am so excited. You can just tell your passion for it. So I'll definitely make sure that links and information gets into the show notes. I also know you've got like an event planner out there, don't you? Right now, maybe
Yes,
not.
the event profit planner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talk to us about that real quick.
Yeah, so that one's a fun one, because I don't think anyone likes numbers, especially I don't know why. It's we don't want to look at the numbers, or we just don't want to create something to track it specifically for events. QuickBooks is great, whatever accounting system you use is great, but this is a one-stop shop where you get to create your budget specifically for the event and can track the actuals all plug and play. You don't have to create
Awesome.
anything. You can track your sponsors if you are someone who uses sponsors, which I recommend for everybody to have sponsorships. But it's a one-stop shop, and it literally will tell you day by day, week to week, if you're profiting at your event, if you're losing money, kind of where you're at. So you know in the moment and how to make the best decisions.
That's huge. That's huge. And where can listeners access that?
That is it's the easiest thing is through my Instagram. Honestly,
Okay.
I have a link. It goes directly to my free resource, the event profit planner, as well as the waitlist for the community will all be on there. So
Perfect. So I'll put your Insta in the show notes then. Awesome.
yes.
All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks for listening. Kat, yeah, I just so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for your insight, for your brilliance. I'm so excited to see what you do. And even too, like how much changes over the next year for you. So congratulations on launching the community. And thanks for unjuggling this with us, guys. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode. It means the world to me that you're here to ride in the struggle bus with me and that you're willing to consider different perspectives, tools, and techniques that just might provide a little bit of relief and get you one step closer to the abundance that is available and waiting for us all. I hope you take a moment to grant yourself some grace where you've been denying it, some love where you didn't realize maybe it was right in front of you, and some faith where you thought all was lost. If this episode had an impact on you, would you please share a comment with a review? I'd love to hear what landed for you, and it helps us get the word out to our fellow struggle bus riders. So please review what was impactful for you. Just know these episodes are a pure labor of love in a space where I'm growing alongside you. I'm evolving every day, and I look forward to all the ways and the things and the perspectives and opinions and choices that will change over the course of time in my own life, day to day. Until next time, just know that you are loved, You are divinely cared for. And in the struggle, the journey of this life really is beautiful. I'm glad that we're in it together. Cheers.